Welcome, welcome. I see so many familiar faces and so many new faces. Excellent. Welcome, welcome. We were bounced up against one of the office hours of an ISSOTL fellow. So we just had to wait for that to wrap up. So we're just kind of getting oriented here. Before we begin, let's see. Why don't we use the chat briefly to introduce ourselves and tell everyone where we are in the world. So hopefully you can see my chat. Can you see my chat? Yeah, okay. And you can hear me okay? Great, great. At my campus, we don't use Zoom, we use another program. So I'm just getting used to Zoom here. Okay. Very exciting. Welcome to the North American Eastern-ish part of the North America, the welcome for ISSOTL Connect 2021. We're so excited. I'm also excited to see some of the event organizers here. Pretty soon, hopefully you'll have a chance to take a nap because you've been working hard. So good to see people joining and posting their where they are in the chat. So I'm Nancy Chick. I'm one of the co-presidents of ISSOTL. And I'm going to begin by telling you a little bit about the society. For some of you, you already know this. So just sit back and relax for the fun stuff. And for those of you who aren't as familiar, let me take you through a little story of the history and the presence of the International Society for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. So I'm going to take a leap of faith here. Oh, no. First, I have to share my screen. And you know, that's required. To do that, you have to talk out loud. You have to say the steps out loud. And now, looks good. It looks good. Okay, let's see. Can you see it as a presentation? Do you see my notes or do you see?
We see your notes.
Yeah, you don't want to see my notes. Okay, hang on.
You're Nancy Chick.
I am Nancy Chick. Okay.
There you go.
All right. So now you see it as a normal presentation. Okay, Zoom. All
Nancy,
right.
Nancy, this is Raj. Just one other kind of Zoom etiquette. We just want to let everybody know we are recording this session, okay? Just for posterity and for future viewings of people who couldn't join us right now. Thanks, back to you.
Thanks, Raj. And if I make any other gaffe like that, please do let me know. I can no longer see the chat while I'm presenting, so continue to post your name and where you are, and any questions post into the chat. Just know that I can't see them right now. So Raj or Nancy Cruzen, maybe you can let me know if there are any questions, or maybe we can save them for when I'm done. Okay. So again, just to welcome you to the event and tell you a little bit about the International Society for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. I am co-president with my good colleague, Ching Huang Hoon, who is from Singapore. She did the welcome addresses hours ago for the Asia Pacific region and the European region. And by all reports, it sounds like it went very well. So I have some big shoes to stand in. So don't worry about reading all this, but just to give you a sense of the history of ISSOTL, on the bottom of the screen, you'll see a URL. If you really want to read it, you can go and read a blog post that Dan Bernstein and Gary Poole wrote. But just to give you a high level history of ISSOTL, there are really kind of three phases to think about: the development of the concept, the gathering of the people, and then really the solidification as a society. You may know that really the idea and the term came when Ernest Boyer wrote Scholarship Reconsidered in 1990. Certainly this kind of work has been done for much longer within specific disciplines, but as a multidisciplinary international, across the board conversation and movement, we look to Boyer's book as the beginning. A second phase is really the gathering of the people. And we can point to the Carnegie Academy for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, their work to bring people together for conversations about teaching and learning and this work of ISSOTL. Then in 2004, there was a very specific meeting of a group of very specific people from different countries saying, you know what, let's form an international society to support these conversations. Thus was born ISSOTL. And then came the work of developing as a professional society. The beginning of annual conferences in 2004, I'll come back to that. The official structure with bylaws and committees and all of those exciting things, yay! That really was solidified in 2006. And then, of course, the founding of a peer-reviewed journal in 2011 with the first publication in 2013. So just a little history. A continuation of the history, I do want to highlight some work that we've begun this year. Conversations have been going on about this effort for many years, but the board, and specifically a subcommittee of the board, has really taken these conversations to heart by drafting these guiding questions for all of our work as we move forward, to really help us intentionally scrutinize and attend to the I in ISSOTL. So these questions appear on all of our committee meeting agendas and begin all of our conversations, to really help us check and guide our privilege, who we're welcoming and who we're not welcoming yet, and how we can do better. What is ISSOTL? ISSOTL is a society, therefore we must have missions and goals. Our mission is to be the society, excuse me, that supports the people who do all this work. So I'll draw your attention to the bullets on the right. This is the work that we do. We are here for the people who do ISSOTL, support ISSOTL, and learn from ISSOTL. We recognize, we encourage, we advocate for, and we bring together the people who do this work. We have a journal. You may or may not be familiar with Teaching and Learning Inquiry. And I saw at least one of the co-editors. I saw Katarina Martinson is here. I'm not sure if Kelly Schrum is also here, but our two co-editors. Lots of interesting details here, but starting from the right, let me just point out that TLI is now open access in line with our values of accessibility, availability, not behind a firewall. Our authors have thus far come from 19 countries, and this information may be from a few issues ago, so I bet that number has expanded. And same with our downloads since 2016. My hunch is now that's probably over 100,000 K. So Teaching and Learning Inquiry, look it up. This is our peer-reviewed journal. Very proud of this work. We also, as you probably know, have an annual conference. Since 2004, we've had an annual conference that's rotated. Ideally, we have 1 year in North America and then the next year outside of North America. That all depends on who applies to be a conference host, but that's our goal. We've never missed an annual conference until COVID. Wah, wah. But I will have an exciting announcement within a few minutes about that. That also led to this event, which we'll hear much more about. Who is ISSOTL? First and foremost, ISSOTL is its members. The numbers on this screen are lower than usual because of not having a conference last year. We are a membership-driven organization. We depend explicitly on our members. So we invite you to renew or maintain your membership, or if you're not a member, to join. And you'll notice at the bottom of the screen, our membership dues are pretty affordable. Yeah. Who else is ISSOTL? Perhaps less interestingly than the individual members, we are a society. So we have a formal structure. We have a board of directors supported wonderfully by AOR Solutions, our administrative center out of Prince Edward Island in Canada. We have 2 subcommittees on the board of directors, and then a lot of the work is done by our 4 standing committees. Really incredible support and activity among those committees. We also have 12 interest groups, which I encourage you to look into. And then we have the ISSOTL Fellows Program, 2 cohorts so far. So this is kind of our formal structure. Just a quick look at our board of directors. Notice, maybe less than the names, notice there's a presidential team. And then there are vice presidents from different regions in the world that have at least 50 members. We have 2 student VPs. We're really proud of that. And of course, a treasurer and a secretary. When I'm finished talking, the more interesting part of this welcome will come from Nancy Cruzen and Raj Chowdhury, who will introduce you more to this event and be far more engaging than me doing death by PowerPoint. So I mentioned that last year we had to cancel our conference because of COVID. We really didn't want to do that because our members rely so much on the conference for getting together, engaging with each other, reconnecting. Those are just really important moments in the society. So we wanted to have some kind of event in lieu of ISSOTL 20. So we wanted a shared experience for current and potential members. We also wanted to prioritize emerging scholars who really needed some kind of event for a presentation. So that's a big focus of ISSOTL Connect 2021. We wanted it to be free, accessible, open to all. And then really the scheduling, which is a fascinating puzzle that impresses me to no end, is really to make it more inviting to our international audience. And you'll hear more about this event momentarily. Yeah. So exciting drum roll, please. Yay! I'm happy to announce that ISSOTL 21 will be hosted virtually. We still are in a pandemic, but from Western Australia. Our hosts from ISSOTL 20 are carrying forward and going to put on a fantastic virtual event. Save the date. Save the date for the call for proposals will come out March 15th. I've seen it already and it's fantastic. There are going to be live streamed events and more. And it's really interesting. They're partnering with a North American university that we can't yet announce. But again, to make it really international and kind of like this event, but on a much larger scale, time zone partners around the world. So save the date. We're so excited about this. I'll end with just a point to invite new members or potential new members to look at our Get Involved page on the website to see the range of ways you can get involved and connect beyond this event, connect with ISSOTL members, connect with the work of SOTL, and perhaps feel less lonely by engaging in this really wonderful society. And I'll really end actually with a thank you to the small but mighty organizing team, small and mighty organizing team who really envisioned, planned, made this entire event happen in just a few short months. I want to say 2 months, maybe 3 months, really impressive. So thank you to these amazing members and colleagues and friends. And with that, I will pass it over to our US vice presidents for a much more interesting session. And now comes the part where I narrate, stop sharing, And Nancy and Raj, I think you take it from there.
Nothing wahr? Kimura Guten Morgen, wie geht es Ihnen? Ohayo gozaimasu. Watashi no name wa Nancy Cruzen desu. Good morning all, my name is Nancy Cruzen and I'm one of the 2 US Vice Presidents. Raj and I do not have a formal presentation. What we'd like to do is have a conversation. And we'll start off a little bit about reminding each other about who is at the table. We are faculty, we are administrators, we are instructional designers, we are students, we are learners all in this great ISSOTL event. So we'd really like to hear a little bit from you. Raj and I have much different perspectives. My background is in health professions, and we'd like to have some conversation about how these interesting times of COVID and in the US, our latest snowmageddon, where people had no power for a while, how this has impacted you. And I'll tell you from a health professional's perspective, this last year has been a challenge because all of the education that we provide in health and social services has been changed. Our students who ordinarily do checkouts and competencies couldn't come to campus. And the students who go for clinical experiences, and this is true for all teachers and librarians and health professions, they're required to do some kind of an experience out in the community, and those were canceled. So that's a little bit about what my perspective is. And Raj has a little bit different perspective and perhaps has some prompts and questions for you about how an institution responds. So Raj?
Sure. Thank you, Nancy. And thank you, Nancy Chick, earlier for setting us up. We are, in fact, very pleased that a number of both the organizers and a wide spectrum of people from both sides of the pond are here. We have a president-elect of ISSOTL is here as well. Sarah Bonnell's here. One of our student representatives, Nicole Galante, is here. A former student representative, now organizer, Sophia Abbott, is here. And so just coming back to the aspect that Nancy was just talking about, any one of our campuses, of course, has dealt with COVID in very different ways. I just happened to be a Zoom master before Zoom was a thing, right? We had already brought Zoom to our campus, so that gave us a huge leg up in terms of being able to respond and manage a whole number of things, right? However, there were other aspects in terms of how we do assessment of teaching that had to be completely re-engineered, right? And so many of you have had to re-envision processes and so re-engineer them to manage. I actually want to give, sort of like they do in Congress sometimes, a minute of my time because we're getting close to the bottom of the hour, because we have either Sophia or Shannon, they are here. Could you set us up with a couple of words about what we expect at the bottom of the hour? And so people have probably looked at the program a little bit, but to just get people excited by hearing from some of the people who put that work in. There might be others on here, but I can see 2 faces on my screen. So maybe first Sophia and then Shannon, just give us a short intro to what people can expect and how they should start to engage with the rest of this conference.
Certainly. Thanks, Raj. Firstly, I'm so grateful that so many of you have joined in this grand experiment with us. Truly, like 2 months of planning, we couldn't have imagined how successful and how much uptake that this would get. So we're so grateful for that. I would say there are several things to look forward to today, let alone over the next couple days. First, Sam and Nicole, our 2 student vice presidents, are going to be leading a session later this morning on what their experience has been like being student members of the board, and also sort of introducing, in particular, graduate students and other student members of ISSOTL or interested student participants in the world of ISSOTL to what this is and how to get involved. And so if you're interested in learning about that or thinking about takeaways that you might share with students that you work with, if you're an academic, this would be a great and engaging session to attend. Also, keep an eye out on Twitter at ISSOTL. Follow the ISSOTL Twitter account and then hashtag ISSOTLConnect21, where lots of conversation has been happening already and will continue to happen. I believe that Shannon will be facilitating a conversation using a Twitter takeover about Cluster 1, which will be released at noon today Eastern Time. And Cluster 1 is about diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice in the scholarship of teaching and learning. The next 2 clusters are coming out over the next 24 hours. So keep an eye on that. There's blog posts on ISSOTL's website that lists the full presentation names of those sessions. And it will be all hosted on ISSOTL's YouTube account. So if you're not free at noon Eastern Time, but you are free late tonight, tomorrow, in the next few weeks, you can always return to those videos and view them with presentations coming from folks all over the world, which is just so exciting to us as a way to continue engagement and continue sharing ideas and learning internationally. And finally, continue to join the office hours sessions. So if you've registered, which if you're here, you have, you can join any of those, even if you didn't initially sign up. The office hours sessions are a really great informal opportunity to get to know SOTL scholars and learn from them about how they do SOTL, what the ISSOTL Fellows Program is, talk with them about your ideas about scholarship of teaching and learning broadly, and just collaborate and get to know more people in your region and outside of your region. Already 2 SOTL Fellows office hours have happened this morning, and I happened to be in both of them, and they were brilliant. Some really wonderful conversation has emerged about all sorts of things like SOTL artifacts and dealing with student resistance to active learning, and how to think about what we love about teaching. So there's all sorts happening there that we would love to have you join us in.
Yeah, so thank you, Sophia. I think that's a good overview of the programming coming. So I will just add a couple of thoughts about our intentions behind this so that you'll have some context about how we tried to anticipate the ways in which you would want to interact. So there are synchronous regional events, and that is so that no matter where you're at in the world, there's something for you to engage with when you're awake. That does not mean that you are limited to your region, though. So if you have insomnia and you would like to participate in the Asia Pacific stuff tonight, go for it. So we were very aware of sort of when you might be awake, when you may be asleep, and making sure there's something offered there. That's why we go with these 12-hour chunks. The second thing is that the opening sessions, everything except for the office hours is recorded and will be put on YouTube later. And so you can always go back and watch something that you missed or watch another regional opening. And then I think the last thing is the working group. We've each, before we got together, had the opportunity to attend a conference for a different organization at some point in this year. And we noticed that that is hard because we are working at our computers, we're trying to conference at our computers, and we can't really fully engage. And so we kept that in mind as well when thinking about how to release and host and offer programming. And so it's definitely a more mini version than what you would get in October. So there's less things to engage with on purpose, but one of the big advantages of having the content videos on YouTube is you can get away from your computer. You can shut down your desktop or your laptop and go watch the content videos on a different device. And so that will hopefully allow you to have a little more of a conference feel and less of a trying to multitask feel. And so that's, I think, the other piece that I would want to point out as you think about how you're going to engage over the next couple of days. And join me on Twitter later today.
Thank you so much, Sophia and Shannon. I appreciate that very much. Nicole, anything from you, just in terms of the student perspective joining here?
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. I'm very new to ISSOTL, so I'm learning a lot, and I'm so excited to learn from all of you today. I'm blanking currently, but hopefully some of you will come to Sam. Sam's in my office hours in the next hour. I'd love to get to chat with some of you.
So one of the things that we did want to do now that we set it up, and I'd initially thought we only had a half an hour for this session, but I think we have a whole hour for this session, right? That's for this particular session, absolutely. The other kind of connection between what's happening here and then thinking about what's going to be happening in Perth, now that that's announced, is this kind of balancing of the stuff that's synchronous versus asynchronous, right? And I think this has been a design consideration many of us have had to deal with in our teaching, in our management of many kinds of work. And I think what's nice here is that we will actually have, right, since we always like data, so we actually were having sort of a pilot of what an international conference around this, trying to manage and balance multiple time zones can be like. And I'm sure we'll get sort of a lot of interesting information out of how this whole process goes into, you know, the way that we might ourselves interact, and we might shape things like committee meetings, right? Because there's an annual ISSOTL committee meeting. We haven't figured out how we're going to do our retreat, you know, for the board at the national conference, at the international conference in October. So those are going to be some interesting takeaways. Nancy Cruzen, back over to you.
I'm going to drop in our chat box in just a moment those 3 issues that Nancy Chick had on her slides, and I'd like for you all to take a look at those and think about what parts of those would you like to see or would you like to participate in incoming conferences. As a reminder, those are the diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice in SOTL. SOTL in COVID times, or we can expand that to COVID in unpredictable times, because we've had many unpredictable events in addition to COVID. We've said, please stop asking what's next, because it would be the 4 horsemen. So let's not ask. Let's just figure out how we manage. And the last is SOTL partnerships, and think broadly about different kinds of SOTL partnerships. So in just a moment, I'll drop those in the chat box here. And next, we really would like to have some conversation and from you generate kinds of questions that you might have that we might be able to work together to solve in SOTL, and also solutions that you may already have found. What did you use that worked well? What questions do you have about posing those solutions as SOTL questions and SOTL answers that you might be able to share with us, either in a venue like this in conference, or that could be added to the journal, or that could go in a blog post. We've had such variety of different experiences from my perspective as a faculty member, and I'm also developing a new program which has brought its own set of issues. How do I find clinical placements for students when all those clinical placements have closed down? But also we'd like to hear from people who are administrators, people who are in charge of institutions and trying to develop those new policies. What sort of a policy is there for a pandemic? We've not had that before. So please just pause a moment and drop a question or solution in here in the chat box. And I'm going to put these 3 topic areas in there just as a reminder and as a prompt. So I'm going to pause just briefly while I put those in.
So Nancy, what I think we might do, since we had no idea how many people would show up to this session, what is fantastic, we have almost 60 people. So as you put those questions in, we can use the famous breakout rooms feature of Zoom and allow people to have some conversations, okay? So grab those questions, people, as they come into the chat, and then I'm going to send everybody to breakout rooms of probably about 5 or 6 people, so small enough to actually have conversations, okay? And then we'll give you 15 minutes or so in the breakout rooms, and we'll come back as a large group and see what fabulous insights people came up with, okay? We probably don't have, I think we had 9 different breakout rooms. I'm not sure we have time to actually go and hear from everybody, unless I think we can do it, well, you know, 30 seconds. Okay, all right. So let's just actually hear, because voices, chat is chat, but to just hear people's voices is also a nice part of a conference. So we'll just have like one item, an issue. One of the main issues that was discussed in your group if I'm just going to call breakout room, hopefully you remember your breakout room number. If not, we'll just kind of go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to 9. We had breakout room. I was in breakout room 9. I remember that. I'll just call on the breakout room, and somebody, if you think you were in that breakout room, give us a 30-second insight that came out of your room. Okay, breakout room 1. Somebody just claim it if you don't know. I'll start calling on people. Peter, what room were you in? You're breakout room 1 now.
We're breakout room 1/9, I believe.
Okay.
And with a really great group of people. And so I don't want to, if you're in my breakout room and you are going to talk, unmute yourself and then I'll shut up. But otherwise I'll keep talking. Ready? Okay, I will keep talking. We talked a lot. We're a bunch of humanists. And we talked a lot about how to think about SOTL and how to do SOTL from a perspective, from a humanist perspective, and thinking not about me trying to create generalizable knowledge, but perhaps thinking about how we can do deep descriptions and pay a lot of attention to not just what is or what works, but what works for whom and in what contexts. So that was our group, really wonderful.
All right, thank you. Breakout room number 2.
I think that was us, and we had a wonderful conversation that centered mostly on DEIJ topics, and specifically we talked a little bit about how we might use institutional data to ferret out where we stand, and as a way of beginning the process of thinking about how to make changes that need to happen, substantive changes. So that's what we talked about.
Super, thank you. Breakout room 3.
So that was us, and I was voluntold through the chat. So I will just say that Nancy Chick actually summarized everything really well at the very end, that we discussed are the intersection of diversity, equity, inclusion efforts with students as partners, and how we'd really like to sort of see and engage with how those two concepts and ideas and efforts sort of intersect in really meaningful ways.
Awesome, thank you. Breakout room 4.
We talked about SOTL in difficult times, and we framed our difficult times at multiple levels. So we began, of course, by talking about the pandemic, but then we said, well, there are also, whole countries hit with financial hardships, and there are institutions with institutional challenges, and there are individuals with challenges around ongoing contracts or not. And so we were thinking about how do we provide support for others, and the common themes were the opportunity to be part of ISSOTL, the opportunity to be part of a virtual conference, the ways in which that allows us to extend our reach to others who might not be able to come in person, that the videos that will be available afterwards are an extraordinary educational tool. And then we talked about the challenge, and the question that we should probably ask ourselves is that even though there are people who are not yet part of our community, do we have the capacity at this time when we are all feeling these challenges to reach out to that group? And how do we caretake ourselves at the same time as we are trying to welcome spaces for others, which I know is part of the board's ongoing focus at this time. And I'm trying to think where that really left us with as we suddenly ran out of time in our group. But it was really about being kind to ourselves. A couple of the group members brought that up as a point as to how do we cut ourselves some slack and say that whatever we're doing is great for these times. And that will maybe position us to move forward, because a lot of the work is keeping the right questions in mind.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, thank you. I think we're up to breakout room 5. A group we haven't heard from.
Looks like that was actually Peter's group, so he was
Okay.
he just picked a number.
Okay.
But if other folks from that group had things to expand on, that'd be great.
Ah, here it is. Okay, I see. We still have a record of the breakout rooms. Okay, well, I'll give 2 seconds of a Zoom pause for anybody else in Peter's group to speak up. If not, I'm just going to call on somebody in room 1, that person that I know, actually, person that I don't know, Shirley Hall. That was the official room 1.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Satellites. It's great to be here, and thanks. And in Breakout Room 1, we really talked about sort of the context and the blurriness. Those were 2 keywords that came out, and sort of what's already been touched on by some of the other groups as well. We really talked about how, how do we make this accessible and open and inclusive in terms of, drilling down into, is it just faculty? Who are our members? Who are our potential members? How do we reach those audiences? And just a really excellent, warm, really diverse group of people and discussions. So yeah, and any other group member, please chime in if I haven't covered it effectively.
Okay, we're going to move on to, thank you there, Shirley. Moving on to room 6.
Hi everyone, I was asked to feedback from our group. I think one of the main themes that came out of our discussion was around our respective roles in our home institutions to build capacity for supporting faculty who might be new to the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. And we were talking about and sharing examples of sustained development programs and the value of those in helping to build community and confidence in faculty who are new to engaging with the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. And so really, I think what I took from that is the value of shifting from perhaps those of us that have that role in our institutions to support others, moving from one or two, a consultation model where you might have a research drop-in to discuss ideas, to something that might move to a one-year program, or for example, at case at Mount Royal, where I'm based, we have a 3-year program where we have a rolling cohort year upon year that moves researchers from introduction to Scholarship of Teaching Learning through to conducting, analysing and disseminating their own work. And in the linking to ISSOTL during COVID, I think I certainly feel grateful for the spaces in between, for that community building and connection and kind of the intellectual space that we're all desperately missing from our in-person conferences. So yeah, kind of ISSOTL partnerships and doing ISSOTL during difficult times. We kind of spanned across a number of things. Thanks.
Thank you, Sherry. Room 7. I'm keeping an eye on the time here, so we have 3 minutes to get the last 3 rooms in here. Room 7 was Shannon Sipes and others.
All right, I guess the others would like to stay quiet, which is fine. I did tell that group that the planning committee has 0 expectations that you will turn on your camera at any point during the next few days, and that you should speak or type as works for you, because we're all coming in at different times and different points in our day, and you may not be camera ready. So totally great. We talked more about what ISSOTL is and ISSOTL as an organization, because almost all of the members in the group, this is their first time at ISSOTL, and they are in potentially new roles to them. So we talked a little bit about how they might engage and who the ISSOTL community members are. So I spoke very highly of everybody. Please don't let me down. I said that you were all very nice and helpful.
Thank you, Shannon. All right, moving on to room 8. Room 8 was Adam Smith, Joan Middendorf, Kelly, and Lauren Hayes.
Well, I'll be honest that we initially talked about the weather.
Okay.
Yeah, this is sort of a thing for all of us. When one person was in Kansas relating an 80-degree swing from last week to this week. But I think we really quickly zeroed in, and another member of our group, Kelly, brought up the idea of the extent to which these categories intersect with each other. We talked a lot about sort of defining new partnerships when we're dealing with the very sort of quotidian logistical problems of getting people to the internet, you know, in institutions that are rural, and thinking about how that affects the partnerships that we form, and thinking about how that shapes issues of access to the different kinds of pedagogy that we're using right now. So besides the weather, that's where our conversation went.
Thank you, Adam. And room 9. I was briefly popping in and out of room 9. Susanna, well,
Yeah.
let me just call on you since I've known you the longest of
I thought it
anybody here.
was, I thought we were time was gonna run out, but we'll go quickly. So we had a very North American group when we were just getting to know each other. Leah and Gina are new to ISSOTL, and we were answering some questions, and then we had Carol from University of Toronto, who is is retiring in June. So we had a nice wide spectrum, and we talked about definitions around our different contexts and what our classrooms look like and the questions that we have, and also ways to build capacity around sustaining conversations and where we can ask questions about our different contexts and what hybrid means. And I've been thinking a lot about backstage conversations this week, Katerina. So how do we sustain and foster more conversations like that in this very fragmented time? Thank you.
Thank you. So we are at the top of the hour, right? Nancy Cruz, and if I may, I'm just going to summarize in 15 seconds. For those of you, if there are still people coming late, and we do have a recording. So in the first part of this session, we heard from Nancy Chick. She sort of provided a co-president's welcome, and then provided us some background on the history of ISSOTL and and where the society is going in at least the near future. And then we had some very nice breakout rooms where we had a chance in small groups to discuss some of the pressing issues of the day. And it's just been fantastic representation from not only every corner of North America, but then also some people from other parts of the world as well. So we were reminded in the chat that in 1 hour, the first session, the cluster 1 talks launch, correct? And so, yeah, go and enjoy. All right, so with that, I'm going to call this session to a close.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.